Folks, they're listening. There's a new Unearthed Arcana out today, and we're getting variant class features, something I've wanted for a long time and one of my favorite things from previous editions. I'm going to go through it all in depth and talk all about it, so if you're curious, stay tuned. All right, so here we are on the Wizards of the West Coast website. We can see class feature variants. Again, I think this goes back to my point from earlier on about how the next book we're going to get is going to be a player-based source book, probably having one of each new, one of the new subclasses we received in the previous Unearthed Arcanas, and now it seems more than likely, hopefully, the potential for new and expansions to existing class features for everything that we already got. And we'll get into that in just a second. I do want to point out that there was something very similar to this in 3.5, which again, I'm speaking to because I know very well. And I think a lot of it originally started with a book called Unearthed Arcana back in the 3.5 days. And it was a book including a bunch of different variant class features. And what I mean by that is things where you lose one feature in favor of another. Or in this case, there is some of that, but there's also just a general expansion of existing things. And it's stuff, I think, that kind of goes along the lines of all the new subclasses we've seen get a lot more power early and a lot more options and abilities to do so, and this is going to fix a lot of that. So let's just take a look at the document right here. So first of all, again, everyone, I know that Unearthed Arcana is playtest material. I'm well aware. I know you guys hammer it on me every time in the comments whenever I have a comment one way or another about how I think something is overpowered or underpowered. Yes, I know it's playtest, but a lot of the time, making good videos means being hyperbolic. Anyway, so what it says, probably the most important thing you're going to see here is the DM decides which of these options are available to the characters in a campaign. A DM is free to prohibit these variants, allow all of them, or make a subset of them available to you. So that's kind of what I anticipated. This isn't going to be like a hard errata that's going to show up in a document that is future printings of the player's handbook are going to have these available. That is not the case. These are going to be options that if you want to incorporate into your game, you can. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. And that's just how it is. And I think, again, we'll go through them together and see if I change my mind as we read through them. I read through them once already today. I'll read through them again. But I'd be in favor and say, for the most part, I would say allow these in your game because all it's going to do is give your players more versatility and more customizability in their characters, unless that's something you really don't want, and I'll explain why as we go through here. So, proficiency, versatility, this is something that is allowed at 4th level and higher. So this is anytime you get an ability score improvement. So that's for your typical classes, 4, 8, 12, 16, 19. And then obviously fighters and rogues get more. But whenever you gain an ability score improvement feature from your class, you can also replace one of your skill proficiencies with a skill proficiency by your class offered by your class at 1st level. The proficiency you replace needn't be from the class. This change represents one of your skills atrophying as you focus on a different skill. I love this idea. So this isn't crazy. You're still getting the ability score improvement or the feat if you're playing with that. And what it's going to say is you're going to ditch a proficiency that you have for one from your class, one of the initial ones. And so usually that's relatively small curated list, somewhere in the range of like 6 to 10 different skills that you can choose from, and you choose one of those. I like the flavor piece here, one of your skills atrophying as you focus on a different skill. This also reminds me of things from previous editions called retraining. So this may be something where like, okay, I got an item, let's say, that gives me proficiency in a skill. Or here's a really good example. Let's say you're a warlock and you chose you chose a background that gave you, I don't know, deception, right? As an example. And you chose that one invocation that gives you like deception and persuasion. Well, now you have deception twice. So technically, in character creation, when you get a feat twice, you kind of can replace it. But at this point, you probably wouldn't be able to. So you could theoretically lose one of those ability score improvements, the deception proficiency you had from the start, in favor of something else, and you'd still have deception from the invocation. either way, it works out well. You may find that, you start off in your campaign saying, I want to take religion as a skill, and your DM never has you make religion checks, so it's pointless. When you hit level 4, maybe you trade it out for Arcana or whatever. And then it also has this here, if you know any of the maneuvers from the fighter's Battlemaster archetype, you have access to options in the fighter section. We'll get to that. That was just kind of called out here, but I don't think it's necessary. So first up is Barbarian. It's going to go in alphabetical order. Survival Instincts. This one, I should point out, a lot of them say enhance. This one specifically says replace. So Danger Sense is the Barbarian's advantage on dexterity saving throws that they can see. This replaces that in favor of giving you 2 skills: Animal Handling, Medicine, Nature, Perception, or Survival. You choose 2 of those. Your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make with those. So this would be trading away advantage on dexterity saving throws for basically expertise in 2 of these skills. Probably the prime one there would be Perception, as Perception is one of the best, if not the best skill in the game. But, you're trading away advantage on dexterity saving throws. Maybe you have a really high dexterity. Maybe you have multi-class and you have evasion from a rogue or a ring of evasion or something, and you don't need that advantage because you can just succeed on a dex save. Then maybe that's for you. Instinctive Pounce. This is a 5th level Barbarian feature. This replaces your 10-foot movement speed bonus that you get at 5th level. When a creature ends its turn within 15 feet of you, you can use your reaction to move up to half your speed to a space closer to that creature. This movement doesn't provoke attack of opportunities. So this is like a limited level disengage as a reaction. And if the creature, say, hit you and moved away and was still within 15 feet, or moved in, and your turn's coming up, this gives you the option to reposition yourself. This has a ton of tactical benefits. It's interesting because a lot of the reactionary-based move things we saw are for rogues. So when someone ends their turn next to you, you can use your reaction to move away. This is when they end their turn within 15 feet. You can use your reaction to move in. This has a ton of opportunities that I can't even think of all of them here in one spot. This can get you close to give your rogue sneak attack. If you're a polearm master, this has uses to possibly get you a little closer. So if they try to move, you can clip them with Sentinel and polearm master. A lot of good options, and it doesn't provoke any attacks of opportunity. So there you go. Very useful. I'm not sure if it, for every Barbarian, does it make sense to lose your fast movement. But again, maybe you have the mobile feat and you're fine with 40 feet movement, and that would be enough. For Bard, this I thought was really interesting. For all of the spellcasting classes, they expanded their spells by giving them new spells on their spell list. And what's honestly shocking to me is a lot of these I thought were on those spell lists already, and was actually kind of surprised that they weren't. I'm referring mostly to the Xanathar spells, but let's go through the list here. So this just enhances your spellcasting. These are added to the spell list. This one, I would say, across the board, apply this to all of your classes, and I'll get to a couple instances where it's a little funky, but we'll talk about it. So Cause Fear from Xanathar is, again, surprised it's not a Bard spell. Color Spray, Command. Aid, Enlarge, Reduced, Mind Spike, Mirror Image, Phantasmal Force. I'm pretty sure Phantasmal Force is a Bard spell, so I don't know why that's not there. Let me just double check, but I could have sworn Phantasmal Force was a Bard spell because I have it on a Bard. Phantasmal Force is a Bard spell, so that's just a typo, I guess. But again, a lot of these I feel like are Bardish, right? Cause Fear, Mirror Image, and like Aid and Enlarge Reduce are like buffing spells, and a lot of people imagine in their brain bards as like buffing based characters, so that makes sense. Mass Healing Word is one that I've been curious about for a long time. Bards have access to Mass Cure Wounds, so having Mass Healing Word made a lot of sense to me. Bards getting slow is interesting. I'm a fan of that. I wish they got haste too. I love Tiny Servant, and I play Bards, so I'm pumped about that. Phantasmal Killer, another one I also thought was on the Bard list. Okay, no, that one I thought was weird because they had Phantasmal Force, but not Phantasmal Killer. So that was weird. Contact Other Plane, Rary's Telepathic Bond. This is huge. They're both ritual spells, and you are a Bard, so you can ritual cast them. Hero's Feast, again, one that I feel like makes sense for a Bard to have. Tensor's Transformation is huge, because Tensor's Transformation is like you kind of become a hulking creature type thing, and it's usually really only good. It's only, I think, a wizard spell, So it's kind of useless because it's very contingent on proficiencies, if I recall, Tensor's transformation. So having it on a bard actually makes a lot more sense to me. Is actually one I thought about taking as a magical secret. Let me read it to you here. You gain 50 temporary hit points. You have advantage on attack rolls with weapons you make. Attack rolls you make with weapons. They're simple and martial weapons. When you hit a target with a weapon attack, it takes an extra 2d12 force damage. You have proficiency with all armor, shields, simple weapons, and martial weapons. Proficiency in strength and constitution saving throws. You can attack twice. When you take the attack action, you ignore this benefit if you already have extra attack. I thought that was all good, but I feel like more often than not, as a wizard, you're not going to have a pretty high strength or dexterity, but as a bard, you might. So getting proficiency with the different armors doesn't make a lot of sense for me for Tensors because it's only up to 10 minutes, but I think that that's pretty cool. Any of the power word spells make sense for a bard to have, power word pain being one of them. They seem to be adding a lot of the rainbow kind of effects, right? We've got color spray up here. We added prismatic spray. Antipathy, sympathy kind of fits. Maze, another good utility spell. And then prismatic wall. So we've added all those. I think I'd give your bard this spell list if you're letting bards play in your game. I think, again, some of these enlarge, reduce, aid, mass healing word, slow. These are really good buffing, debuffing spells. They fit very well on the class, so I would add them in. Magical inspiration. If a creature has bardic inspiration die from you and casts a spell, the creature can roll that die and add the number to one damage or healing roll of the spell. So this, I think, is huge because this doesn't actually affect any of the other bardic inspiration uses. Typically, you can add bardic inspiration to attack rolls, ability checks, saving throws, and certain other instances you can add them to damage rolls depending on the type of bard you are. But this now lets you add them to spell rolls, which could be pretty substantial, right? If you're casting a fireball and you're adding a d8 to that fireball, that could be pretty useful. But also to healing, which is pretty cool. So I like that. And that just expands on the existing bardic inspiration. And this spell versatility, you're going to see something like this available to every single class out there. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace one spell you learned from the spellcasting feature with another one from the bard spell list. This new spell feature must be of the same level that you replace. So that's tricky. It must be the same level. So if you have a third level spell, you can't swap a third level spell for a fourth level, but you can swap a third for another third. So that gives you, again, a ton of versatility. Now, when you take a long rest, if you know you're going to head, it's only one spell. But if you know you're going to go into a scenario like, we're going into the plane of fire, and I'm not going to take this fire spell. Again, I know you're a bard, you don't really have a lot of those. I'm going to swap this thunder-based damage spell because we're going against in an area of silence where I can't cast. Thunder damage does nothing. I'm going to replace it with this. It also says cantrips are 0-level spells, which don't lose spell slots. When a feature applies to spells, the feature applies to cantrips. So this does let you swap your cantrips out. And the reason why is because you'll see right next for Cleric, they added cantrip versatility, which is whenever you gain a level in this class, you can replace one cantrip you learned from the spellcasting feature with another cantrip from the Cleric spell list. So because Clerics, Druids, and so on can prepare their spells and change those out on a long rest, they could not change out their cantrips. You can now change up your cantrips as a Cleric in those other classes when you level up. But a bard, you were stuck with your spells known until you leveled. Now you can change one spell out on a long rest. So they're kind of giving you that versatility. They've also added new spells to the Cleric spell list. Cause Fear, Wrathful Smite, Branding Smite. Aura of Vitality, I always thought was weird, was not a Cleric spell. I think that is only a Paladin spell. And I thought Aura of Life and Aura of Purity were both Cleric spells as well, but maybe those are only Paladin. I'm going to check that right now because those are 4th level. Yeah, all right, they're not. So those are only Paladins, the Aura spells. Aura of Vitality, Aura of Life, Aura of Purity. So Aura of Vitality is a healing spell. These are kind of both protection-based spells, so that makes sense. Skill Empowerment, kind of a useless spell all around. I'm surprised that Clerics didn't have access to Wall of Light. That seemed like a cleric-y spell, right? It's a Wall of Light. And then obviously Power Word Heal seems like a no-brainer, but they have Mass Heal, but giving them that spell again, I don't see any downside to adding these to your existing cleric spell list. I think your cleric will be happy, and I think you'd be it's an all-around good idea. Then a couple new options for Channel Divinity. I like this one a lot. Well, you can use your Channel Divinity as a bonus action. You touch your holy symbol, utter a prayer, and regain an expended first level spell slot. So this is tricky. As I was talking with some friends about it, outside of your class's Channel Divinity option, the only base Channel Divinity you get is Turn Undead. Depending on the campaign you play in, Turn and Destroy Undead may never be used. It may just not be a useful option for you, or it may just not ever come up because you don't fight enough undead for it to be a problem. And again, depending on what what domain you choose, you may get a lot more leverage out of your Channel Divinity in that respect. But if you have a class that doesn't give you a ton of options for Channel Divinity, or ones that you're going to use too often, this goes a long way by giving you back a spell for using your Channel Divinity. It is only a first level spell, but the benefit is your Channel Divinities come back on short rest. So this is essentially a minor way to sort of get Warlockian kind of spell recharge. You're going to be able to get a spell back, or I mean, I guess at high levels, I think you can get 3 Channel Divinities total. So you'll be able to get those Channel Divinities back. Sorry, this is kind of running kind of loud. I want to move that away from the microphone. But yeah, you'll be able to get spells back on a short rest, essentially, first level spell slots. Again, I think the 3rd Channel Divinity comes into play at level 17, so the one you get at 2 and the one you get at 6 will be pretty useful if you're coming to the end of, you're going to be taking a short rest, rather, and you haven't gotten a chance to use your Channel Divinities at all. This would be a way to pop up 2 more first level spells. It does say you regain 1 expended one, so that means you can't get above your normal level of first level slots, but either way, still useful. And lastly, this one I think is a really good one. It replaces Divine Strike entirely. This one I could see people arguing to not include, and I could see that. In battle, you're blessed with Divine Might. When a creature takes damage from one of your spells or weapon attacks, you can also deal 1d8 radiant damage to the creature. Once you deal this damage, you can't use this feature again until the start of your next turn. So that's kind of as it stands currently. The way Divine Strike works, I guess I should say, is when you make attacks, one attack on your turn can apply the extra 1d8 damage, whatever it might be. And obviously, potent spellcasting is you add your Wisdom modifier to any cantrips, any cleric cantrips you cast. So that could be, a static number up to a 5 typically, but now you can replace that with a d8 and it affects all of your spells. So this could be, your Spirit Guardians, and it's not tied to a specific thing. So it just happens once you use this damage, though, you can't use this feature again until the start of your next turn. So there's potential options where you wouldn't necessarily be able to use this, right? So if you're going to use, like, say you had Warcaster and you used a cantrip on your turn, or maybe you were have levels of fighter and you could do 2 cantrips or something like that, there's potential options where this would get less use than, say, a potent spellcasting would. But I'd say more often than not, this is going to give you more versatility, and it will allow you, as you could kind of switch up more. You don't have to be more casty cleric or more melee cleric. It gives you both. It's also radiant damage, which is nice, especially for certain cleric subtypes that give you things that are like poison damage or fire damage. They're useful, but they're highly resisted types of damage. Radiant is not, so that's pretty beneficial. And again, it works for both, so it's got versatility. A druid's going to get cantrip versatility, same thing that the cleric has. We're going to add some new druid spells here. Acid Splash kind of makes sense. Surprised it wasn't a one for a druid out the gate. Ceremony, protection from evil and good, seems like a lot of classes have this, so that one's kind of a shocker. Augury, that's fine. Enlarge Reduce kind of fits for a druid, I feel like. And Continual Flame, that's a non-combat spell, so that makes sense. Aura of Vitality, again, more healing. Elemental Weapon also makes sense for a druid. Like to see them get Revivify, so they can be healing and resurrecting earlier on, not just reincarnating. Thunderstep makes sense. Wall of Sand makes sense. I'd say Divination also makes sense. It is kind of you don't necessarily need to commune with a god you can commune with nature, as it were, with Divination. Fire Shield, it's an elemental thing. Druids have a lot of elemental magic. That makes sense. Cone of Cold is a nice change because druids don't have a lot of high damaging spells that aren't concentration. So Cone of Cold is a nice touch. Dawn, also another similar kind of a... You have Moonbeam. Dawn is kind of in a similar nature to that. Immolation, again, another fire damage spell. Flesh to Stone. Symbol, Incendiary Cloud, again, some more elemental based. And then again, Mass Polymorph seems like a no-brainer for a druid. And then Power Word Heal, again, healing stuff. We have Wild Companion. I like this one a lot. It enhances your wild shape, so it doesn't replace it. You can expend a use of your wild shape to cast a Find Familiar spell without material components. When you cast the spell, the familiar is a Fey instead of Beast, and the familiar disappears after a number of hours equal to half your druid level. That is huge because for non-moon druids, I'd say if you're not something like a Spores druid or a Wildfire druid, you're probably almost never going to use your wild shape. But now, if it's a Find Familiar, you're probably going to use this all the time, and wild shapes come back on a short rest. Especially if you're at a higher level, this will be pretty big for you. All right, now we're moving on to Fighter. So Fighter's going to get fighting style options. We're going to add a bunch of new types of fighting styles. So this may make a champion fighter even more of an option you want to go down because it's going to give you access to two fighting styles. So that'll be pretty cool. So it's going to say Superior Technique is an option for you. This is a new fighting style. And basically you get one maneuver from the Battlemaster archetype. So the DC is 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your strength or dex mod you choose. And you gain a superiority die, which is a D6. If you already have superiority dice from some other means, the die is added to any superiority dice pool you already have. So if you wanted to forego your fighting style at level 1 as a Battlemaster fighter, this would give you an extra superiority die. You also get maneuver versatility. If you know any maneuvers from the fighter's Battlemaster archetype, you can replace one maneuver with a different maneuver when you finish a long rest. Again, this is huge. I like the flavor here. This reflects your mental and physical preparation for the day ahead. This affects the Martial Adept feat as well. So if you're a class that has that, that's useful. But being able to swap those out, because again, I would be surprised if there's not a scenario where you took a couple of different maneuvers and you're like, man, I don't really ever use maneuver X. I kind of wish I didn't take it. Well, now you can swap it out. And then they've added new maneuver options. So here are some new maneuvers. Ambush. When you make a dex stealth check or any initiative roll, you can expend a superiority die and add that to the roll. This is big, adding to your initiative roll. Whenever you make it, it doesn't say you have to do it before or after you roll. So you could roll, see if your initiative is crappy, and then add it. Or again, you may be a heavy armor-based fighter, so adding bonuses to your stealth checks could be useful. Bait and switch. When you're within 5 feet of an ally on your turn, you can expend one superiority die and switch places with that ally, provided you spend at least 5 feet of movement. This movement doesn't provoke attacks of opportunities. Roll the superiority die until the start of your next turn. That ally gains a bonus to AC equal to the number rolled. So you have to use this on your turn, but it doesn't use an action or a bonus action or anything. It just uses 5 feet of your movement. And you can do this. You can give them a bonus to the AC, and you can possibly position yourself in such a way that you'll be able to take more of the damage than them, or whatever the case may be. Brace. When an enemy you see moves within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to expend one superiority die and make a weapon attack against that creature. If the attack hits, add the superiority die to the damage roll. This one is big. I would absolutely take this one if I was a fighter. Anything that's going to give me a reliable use of my reaction is huge. It does say within 5 feet, so that negates any kind of wonkiness you could do with Polearm Master. But it's going to give you the opportunity to potentially make an attack. It's when it moves within 5 feet, so it doesn't have to attack you. It just moves within 5 feet. You can use your reaction and make an attack. Potentially, if you roll high enough, and this is going to get added to the damage, you may be able to down that enemy before they're ever actually able to hit you or do any damage or whatever they were trying to do. So this is definitely one that I would absolutely add to my Battlemaster fighter list. Restraining Strike. Immediately after you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack on your turn, you can expend a superiority die and use a bonus action to grapple the target. Add the superiority die to your athletics check. The target is also restrained. So this right here makes you the best grappler in the game. This makes you better than the Tavern Brawler feat and the Grappler feat. This one thing is going to give you make an attack, you hit with the attack, And then you can bonus action grapple and add a bonus to it equal to your restraining strike here. So that's pretty big. And it's a grapple and a restrain all at once. So that's just awesome. This, again, makes you the best grappler out there. I highly recommend, if you're going to go that route, take this one. Silver Tongue, when you make a deception or perception check, you can spend a superiority die and add that to it. This is great because typically your fighters aren't going to have a lot of options when it comes to, not always, right? But sometimes you're probably not going to have a ton of, you're not going to be the face of the party, the social person there. This is going to give you a little bit of a benefit for that, or help you out if you need to. Snipe, as a bonus action, you can expend 1 superiority die and make a ranged weapon attack. You can draw a thrown weapon as part of making this attack. If you hit, add the superiority die to the damage, attack's damage roll. So this is nice because this is giving you a bonus action attack. So it's a bonus action attack, and it adds the superiority die to the damage if it hits. So you already have your fighter different attacks, your options for your action surge. And this is going to give you a sort of reliable option. Again, where I would say this would be another super useful thing would be if you take the Martial Adept feat. So this gives you this option for this. Again, Martial Adept, I think, only gives you 1 superiority die. But that's going to give you this option for a bonus action attack on any class, theoretically, if you take that feat. And it gives you a little bit of extra damage. Again, if you're really trying to make the archer build, someone that's a really good bow shooter or archer of some kind in 5th edition, fighter is usually the way to go. And if you add this maneuver onto it, that's a pretty good way to do it. Again, that's if you want to go Battle Master. There's obviously other ways to be a really good archer as a fighter. And Studious Eye, when you make an insight check or investigation check, you can add 1 superiority die and add that to the ability check. Again, what's really nice with these, it's just when you make it, you can choose to add it, so it doesn't have to be before you roll or any of that stuff. So if you're like, I don't trust this guy, insight check, and you make your roll, and you're like, I'm going to add a superiority die to that, which is nice. Monk, okay. It's going to upgrade your martial arts ability. You practice your martial arts with specially chosen weapons, which become monk weapons for you. You can choose a number of weapons to be your monk weapons equal to 5 plus your wisdom modifier, minimum of 5 weapons. The chosen weapons must each meet the following criteria. The weapon must be a simple or martial weapon. Okay. So I guess it can't be a ranged weapon is the point there. Or no, wait, simple or martial. I don't know what other weapons they're talking about. You must be proficient with the weapon. The weapon must lack these properties: heavy, special, or two-handed. So I like this. I think it's a cool concept on the flavor side. I think it takes a little bit of the intrigue and things out of the Kensei Monk, which kind of has that ability. Granted, a Kensei Monk can do can break this kind of heavy, special, or two-handed option. They can do that, which is nice. But like Quarterstaff is one of the ones you have right out the gate, and it has the two-handed option. So it's kind of a little wonky with existing things. Again, I feel like if your DM added this in and somebody was playing a Kensei Monk to fight with a longsword and flavor it as a katana, you would now have that as just a base monk. So it kind of loses some of the luster of it. Because again, being able to use those, I think, would be a pretty big boon to any monk out there. But, you may or may not want to add this to your game. Key-fueled strike. If you spend 1 key or more as part of your action on your turn, you can then immediately make one unarmed strike as a bonus action. So I took a long time when I first read this, trying to figure this out. And it has to be a situation where you're spending a key point to do something as an action on your turn that you wouldn't, so you can't be taking the attack action. So there are certain monk subclasses that let you cast spells and stuff. So this could potentially let you cast a spell as an action and then make a bonus unarmed strike, bonus action unarmed strike. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something on this one off the top of my head, why this one would be super useful. You guys can tell me in the comments. And this one, again, giving you just more options for your key usage. When you make a ranged weapon attack, you can spend a key point to prevent attacking at long range from imposing disadvantage on your attack rolls until the end of your current turn. That's cool. And then as an action, you can spend 2 key points and roll a martial arts die. This is your extra. So this starts off at a D4 at 2nd level and goes all the way up to a D10. You regain a number of hit points equal to the number rolled. So that's just a way to get some quick healing. Again, as a reminder, as a monk, you're going to get your key points back on a short rest. So potentially blowing some key points early on to get a little bit of extra healing before you short rest could be an option for you if you have extra. All right, for Paladin, you're going to get new fighting style options. Well, there's more fighting styles at the end for anybody who gets fighting styles, so you're going to get new options for those. But Blessed Warrior becomes one of those fighting style options, which is you get 2 cantrips of your choice from the Cleric spell list. They count as Paladin spells, they use your Charisma modifier, and whenever you gain a level in this class, you can replace one of those cantrips with another cantrip from the Cleric spell list. You're going to see something almost identical to this for the Ranger. But this is awesome. This is a way, I mean, you're foregoing potential solid damage output or AC boosts or whatever you would get from your regular fighting style in favor of cantrips, but that's something a Paladin doesn't normally get, so that's cool. And you're going to add some spells to your Paladin spell list. Gentle, Repose, Prayer of Healing, Warding Bond. Again, all things I feel like should have been on the Paladin spell list in the first place. Life Transference, okay, I'm not too keen on that one. Spirit Guardians is my favorite spell of all time, so I obviously am a big fan of that. And then Dawn and Flame Strike. The only thing is, like, certain, I think it's the Oath of the Crown Paladin got Spirit Guardians as one of its Oath spells, which made it a really cool option to take. If this becomes a standard thing in your game, then that loses some of its luster in that respect. Again, it's a free thing. You don't have to prepare it. It's always prepared for you, but it just loses a little bit of that, like, what made it special in that respect. And then again, you're going to get the exact same thing that the Cleric got, which is arguably more useful for a Paladin. As I'd say, if your Paladin levels give you some really good feature, I'm going to use Oath of the Ancients Paladin as an example. As someone who played one for 17 levels, I almost never used my Channel Divinity ever because I didn't really find them super useful. But if I could have used a bonus action to get a first level spell slot back to potentially get extra smites, that would have been huge. So I would highly recommend you add this option in as a big fan of Paladins. All right, you know we were going to get here. You knew this was going to be interesting. Ranger. Boy, how do we have some changes here. So, replacing Natural Explorer gets you Deft Explorer. You get one of these benefits at 1, another one at 6, and another one at 10. You choose the order, giving you some options here. Canny. Choose one skill: Animal Handling, Athletics, History, Investigation, Insight, Perception, Medicine, Nature, Stealth, or Survival. I was way out of order, sorry about that. You gain proficiency in it if you don't have it already, and you get expertise in it, so you're going to get double the proficiency bonus. Kind of makes sense to give expertise to a pseudo expertise to a ranger. I feel like it fits. In addition, thanks to your extensive wandering, you're able to speak, read, and write 2 additional languages of your choice. This is a pretty useful ability. Could be super helpful at level 1. Roving, your walking speed increases by 5. You gain a swim speed and climbing speed equal to your walking speed. So that's great. You're an outdoor person. You can climb, you can swim, and you're a little bit faster. And lastly, Tireless. As an action, you can give yourself a number of temporary hit points equal to 1d10 plus your Wisdom mod. You can use this special action a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. In addition, whenever you finish a short rest, your exhaustion level, if any, is decreased by 1. So that's huge. Whenever you finish a short rest, you can lose exhaustion, which is a big deal. And again, the action part of doing the temporary hit points, probably not something you're going to do in combat, but you can do it up to your Wisdom modifier times, also giving you a reason to focus more on your Wisdom as a ranger. And it's just going to give you some temporary hit points, which is a great thing to have. Again, you'd have to choose, but by level 10, you'd have all 3. Favored Foe is going to replace Favorite Enemy, and this is what I've heard so many times, and I 100% agree with this one. You know the Hunter's Mark spell. You can call on your bond with nature to mark a creature as your favorite enemy 4 times. You know the Hunter's Mark spell, and Wisdom is your spellcasting ability modifier for it. Well, you can use it a certain number of times without expending a spell slot and without requiring concentration, a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. When you gain the spellcasting feature at 2nd level, Hunter's Mark doesn't count against the number of ranger spells you know. So they're giving you Hunter's Mark, your specific ability that you have, for free. That spell is yours once you hit 2nd level. But at level 1, which makes first level ranger pretty solid, you know Hunter's Mark, and you can use to pick somebody and Hunter's Mark them essentially. And Wisdom is your spellcasting ability modifier for it, and you can use it a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier without expending a spell slot, and without requiring concentration, which is huge. So again, a first level ranger dip, depending on what you choose from Deft Explorer and what you choose as your favored foe, is pretty solid now. You could get some movement speed and some other movement options, some temporary hit point options, some survivability and reduction of exhaustion. This is again another cool way if you were to do like be a bard, take a level in ranger, and take a level in rogue, you could get a bunch of expertises on things, which is pretty solid. And then you get Hunter's Mark, extra Hunter's Marks for free without no spell slots and no concentration. And then you have new options for your fighting style. Again, we'll get to those. And you're going to have, similar to what we had for the Paladin, you're going to have Druidic Warrior, which is options 2 cantrips instead of your fighting style, 2 cantrips from the Druid spell list. Adding to your Ranger spell list is Aid and Tangle. And Tangle, it seems like, I'm shocked that that's not on the Ranger spell list as it is. Searing Smite, Gust of Wind, Magic Weapon, Enhance Ability, Warding Bond, Blinding Smite, Melded to Stone, Revivify. Nice to have some healing for your Ranger there. Tongues. Death Ward, Dominate Beast, again, seems a no-brainer. Awaken and Greater Restoration, also seems like good options. All around good options to add to your Ranger spell list. Spell Versatility, whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace one spell you've learned from this feature with another one. Again, this also works well to help you be more... I feel like it fits to be the Ranger. You can swap out spells on a long rest to fit the scenario you need. They also give you the spellcasting focus of a druid, which is nice because paladins get the holy symbol, which is the same as a spellcasting focus for a cleric. They're giving you the same option as a druid. I also feel like these options are kind of putting you more in line with paladin if you choose to play a ranger. So again, if your DM's going to allow these options, I appreciate that. Here we go. Primal Awareness replaces Primeval Awareness. You can focus your awareness through your interconnections of nature. You learn additional spells when you reach certain levels in the class if you don't already know them, as shown as the Primal Awareness spells. These don't count against the number of spells you know. You can cast one of these spells, each one once without expending a spell slot. Once you cast a spell in this way, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So not only are you expanding your spell list, which is great because it's giving you more options as a ranger, but if you choose one of the archetypes that's going to give you new spells as part of the archetype, it's just adding to your spell list. But what's cool is all of these can be cast once without expending a spell slot, which is good because you're going to have a limited number. And you can still cast them using spell slots if you want to. So that's going to be Detect Magic, Speak with Animals, Beast Sense, Locate Animal or Plants, Speak with Plants, Locate Creature, Commune with Nature. They're very rangery spells. The fact that you can cast Detect Magic once as an action without expending a spell slot is pretty solid. But again, all spells I feel like you may or may not take as a ranger, depending on what kind of way you're going to go, if you're going to be more damagey or more, explory. But these give you them for free. So again, highly recommend those. Fadeaway replaces Hide in Plain Sight. I would agree. Hide in Plain Sight is kind of dumb. I'm not a huge fan of it. You can use a bonus action to magically become invisible, along with any equipment you are wearing or carrying until the start of your next turn. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. This, I think, is verbatim the Furbog ability. So again, a good use. And then we have an update for the Ranger Companion. So if you have a Beastmaster Ranger, so remember, this is going to enhance your Beastmaster Ranger Companion. So everything that's written in the player's handbook that pertains to the animal companion, this is going to enhance that, if I'm reading that correctly. While wandering in the wilds, the friendship can arise from successful use of the animal handling skill or animal friendship spell. If the resulting bond is strong enough, the animal might join the ranger or adventurers. A ranger who has the Beastmaster archetype can form an even stronger bond. So this is a thing that anybody can get if I'm reading this right. A ranger encounters many sorts of animals. Okay. No, I'm sorry. A ranger who has the Beastmaster archetype can form an even stronger bond, feeling almost like a sibling to an animal. A special type of beast awaits a Beastmaster in the wilds, a creature whose lineage stretches back to the beginnings of the world. A primal beast known as the beast of the air or a beast of the earth. Such a creature seeks out the type of companionship that a Beastmaster offers, ready for the two of them to join battle, blah, blah, blah. The Primal Beast is a special creature that a Beastmaster can choose for their ranger's companion. When choosing such a creature, you decide whether it's a beast of air or earth, and you determine its appearance. Stories describe primal beasts that mystically change form to align with the spirit of their companion. When a Primal Beast is met apart from a Beastmaster, the creature takes the form of a regular beast of challenge rating 1/4 or lower as determined by the DM. So, Beast of Air is going to be a small beast, AC 13. Its hit points equal the beast's Constitution modifier plus your Wisdom modifier plus 5 times your Ranger level. The beast has a number of hit dice D6s equal to your Ranger level. It says speed of 10, a fly speed of 60, saving throws of Dex, Con, and Wisdom, the 3 most popular and most damaging ones. Skills in Perception and Stealth. Dark Vision is 60 feet. It understands the languages you speak. It has Flyby. If it dies within the last hour, you can use your action to touch it, expend a spell slot of first level or higher. The beast returns to life after 1 minute and has all of its hit points restored. Awesome. And as a bonus action, you can command the beast to take its shred attack or to hide. Shred is a +5 to hit, 1d6 plus 3 slashing damage. Beast of Earth is medium, has an AC of 12. Its Constitution modifier, its Con mod plus its Wisdom mod plus 5 times your Ranger level. This time it's D8s instead of D6s. Has 40-foot movement speed and either a climb or swim speed of 40 feet. You choose. Dex, Con, Wisdom saving throws, Perception and Stealth checks, Dark Vision, understands the languages you speak. If it moves at least 20 feet straight towards a target and then hits it with a maul attack on the same turn, the target takes an extra 1d6 slashing damage. The DC equals your spell save DC. If the target is a creature, it must make a strength saving throw against your spell save DC or be knocked prone. It has the same Primal Rebirth feature we saw above, and it has the Ready Companion, except it's a maul attack instead of shred. Has a +4 to hit, does a d6 plus 2 damage. What's interesting is that this creature is a little bit stronger, but its attacks are less to hit, do the same amount of damage and less overall damage, because this looks like this is dex based and this is strength based. This one has like no strength but can fly, and this one has a decent strength and dex. So my only sort of gripe about this feature is it says it enhances it, so that may answer it, but like all of the new sort of pet mechanics that have been added to new Unearthed Arcana classes have had that thing where it says like these things level up with your proficiency bonus. If this enhances the existing Beastmaster option, I believe based on that you're going to add your proficiency bonus to the beast's armor class, to its attack roll and its damage roll per what's written in the player's handbook. So that may explain why that's not listed there. Other than that, I think this is pretty good. And you can have them attack as a bonus action, which is one of the big things everyone was complaining about, because all the new ones are better. So this is good. For Rogue, you're going to add Cunning Action Aim as a new option for you. As a bonus action, you give yourself advantage on your next attack roll on the current turn. You can use this bonus action only if you haven't moved during this turn, and after you use the bonus action, your speed is 0. So this is essentially a way for you to get advantage on an attack, potentially giving you sneak attack as long as you don't move. And your movement speed is 0 until the end of your current turn. So you have to basically be in a scenario where you haven't moved. Again, if you combine a rogue with a fighter and have this as an option, you can really get that sniper archer build going. Sorcerer, let's give the Sorcerer some new spells here. We're going to give him Primal Savagery, Grease, Protection from Evil and Good, Flame Blade, Flaming Sphere, Vampiric Touch, Fire Shield, Flesh to Stone, Demiplane, and Foresight. Fine with adding those to the list. Spell Versatility, again, finish a long rest, you can swap one out. And then new options for your Font of Magic feature, your second level feature. You get access to the following ways to spend your sorcery points. Empowering Reserves. When you make an ability check, you can spend 2 sorcery points to gain advantage. Imbuing Touch. As an action, you can touch one non-magical weapon to spend 2 sorcery points to imbue it with magic for 1 minute. For the duration, the weapon is considered magical for the purposes of overcoming immunity and resistance to non-magical attacks. That's a big deal. That could be really useful at a low level to help out your party. And Sorceress Fortitude, you can spend any number of sorcery points to roll a d4 for each point expended. You gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the total rolled. So that's a way to just get some extra, survivability. And a couple new meta magic options. Elemental Spell. When you cast a spell that deals a type of damage from the following list, you can spend 1 sorcery point to change that damage to one of the other ones. So if it does Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder damage, you can choose to change that damage to Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. Seeking Spell. When you cast a spell that requires you to make a spell attack roll or forces the target to make a dex save, you can spend 1 sorcery point to ignore half or 3/4 cover. An unerring spell. If you make an attack roll for a spell and miss, you can spend 2 sorcery points to reroll. You must use the second roll. You can use unerring spell even if you have already used different meta magic options when casting that spell. So that's pretty useful. These are all good options. I think this one's probably the best one, elemental spell, especially if you're a draconic sorcerer and you want to get access to your ability. As we all know, there are more fire spells in the game than any other elemental type. So if you choose that, that could take your Burning Hands and make it Shocking Hands, or your Fireball and make it Lightning Ball, or whatever the case may be, or make it Acid Ball. That way you can get benefits from your Draconic Heritage options. Or again, there's probably a bunch of other ways to make that useful, but again, a good option. And this, it always sucks when you make a spell attack roll and you miss, so giving you the option to re-roll it. And it doesn't, you can use it again. So if you have, like, say, it'd be a lot of sorcery points, but let's say you have Scorching Ray and you keep missing, you could use sorcery points to re-roll that attack roll to try to hit if you miss with all of them. Warlock is going to give you spell versatility. Again, same thing. This is probably even more useful for a Warlock. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace one spell you learned from Pact Magic with another. You're going to have limited spell options anyway. This is probably pretty big to swap out those spells you've gotten to get new ones. I'd recommend giving your Warlock options for this. Your Warlock's also going to get new options. Thunderwave was always dumb that Warlocks never had it in my mind. Knock is also a great option for a Warlock. Animate Dead and Life Transference both feel very Warlocky, as does Phantasmal Killer. Greater Invisibility, I'm fine with that too. Mislead, Modifier, Memory, Planar Binding, and Teleportation Circle. Giving your Warlock Teleportation Circle is very nice. I appreciate that. Create Homunculus, again, feels like a Warlock spell, but again, it's a Mystic Arcanum, so I'm not too sure about that. Magic Jar. I don't know what I can't remember the other Mystic Arcanums off the top of my head, so that may be useful. Project Image, Abidelzims, Horrid Wilting, Gate Shape Change, and Weird. All good options. Then we're going to get a whole bunch of new Invocation options and a brand new Pact option. So I'm going to jump ahead to the Pact of the Talisman because we're going to see Talisman options here. So your patron gives you a special amulet, Talisman that can aid you. When the wearer makes an ability check with a skill in which they lack proficiency, they add a d4 to the roll. If you lose the talisman, you can perform a 1-hour ceremony to replace it. The ceremony can only be performed during a short or long rest, and it destroys the previous amulet. It turns to ash when you die. So this is essentially giving you free guidance on any skill check that is it skill check or ability check? Ability check with a skill in which they lack proficiency, so it won't work on initiatives rolls. But so basically, yeah, free guidance on anything you're not proficient in, which is big. So at level 12, you'll get Bond of the Talisman. While someone else is wearing your talisman, you can use your action to teleport to the unoccupied space closest to them, provided the two of you are on the same plane of existence. The wearer of your talisman can do the same to you, using their action to teleport to you. So this is going to give you the option to basically teleport anywhere on the same plane of existence, as long as someone you know as your talisman. Chainmaster's Fury. This I thought was kind of a good idea here. As a bonus action, you can command your familiar to make one attack. If you chose Pact of the Chain, that's kind of big by not letting you forgo your action to let them attack. Do it as a bonus action, especially if you have a really cool familiar. Eldritch Armor. If you have Pact of the Blade, as an action, you can touch a suit of armor that isn't being worn or carried by anyone and instantly don it. You become proficient with this suit of armor until it's removed. This is awesome because this lets you have heavy armor proficiency. If you have a really sweet suit of, find a cool magic heavy armor, you can just use an action to instantly wear it, to be worn, or to instantly don it. So it's only to don it, but you become proficient with it until it's removed. So this is a great way. And this also means you don't have to be a Hexblade Warlock. So you could be a regular Warlock and get access to medium armor this way. Eldritch Mine, which is a Pact of the Tome feature. So this is if you have the book. Advantage on Constitution saving throws to maintain concentrating on a spell. That is huge. If you're taking the Pact of the Tome, this is a good one anyway. And again, this also potentially makes the options for multi-classing very powerful if you take Pact of the Tome. Another Pact of the Tome feature is Far Scribe. A new page appears in your Book of Shadows. With your permission, a creature can use its action to write its name. You can put a total in there up to your Charisma modifier, minimum of 1. You can cast the Sending spell, targeting a creature whose name is on the page without using a spell slot and without using the material components. To do so, you write the message on the page. The target hears the message in their mind, and if the target replies, their message appears on the page. The writing disappears after 1 minute. As an action, you can magically erase a name and erase a name on the page by touching the name on it. This gives you potentially up to 5 free sending spells per day to 5 different people without having to do anything except have your book. Gift of the Protectors, another Pact of the Tome feature. A new page appears with, this is a really good one. You write the name of up to 5 people, charisma modifier times minimum 1. When any creature whose name appears on that page is reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, they magically drop to 1 hit point instead. Once this magic is triggered, no creature can benefit from it until you finish a long rest. So once anybody benefits from it, they can't do it until you finish a long rest. But this is potentially, if you have a party of 4 or 5 people, a way to protect at least one of them if they don't have access to something like a Death Ward or some other feature. You can erase the name as an action. Investment of the Chainmaster. I also feel like that's a very proper name there, because if you're going to take the time to choose Pact of the Chain and get a familiar, you're making a significant investment, so this makes sense to me. When you cast Find Familiar, you infuse the summoned familiar with a measure of your Eldritch power. It gains a fly speed or a swim speed of 40 feet. It no longer needs to breathe. Its weapon attacks are considered magic for the purposes of overcoming damage resistance. If the familiar forces a creature to make a saving throw, it uses your spell save DC. So if you're going to take the time to invest in that, you're going to make some use out of it. I think that's pretty cool. Again, this also potentially makes it even better to choose a familiar that doesn't have a fly speed, because you're going to give it one. So that's pretty cool. Another Talisman feature at level 9 here, Protection of the Talisman. When the wearer of your Talisman makes a saving throw in which they lack proficiency, they add a d4. So that's going to give you, again, the option to eventually get that guidance, but this time on a proficiency. So like a bless, I guess, a saving throw. And Rebuke of the Talisman. When the wearer of your Talisman is hit by an attack you see within 30 feet of you, attacker you see within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction to deal psychic damage to the attacker equal to your charisma modifier and push it up to 10 feet away from the Talisman's wearer. I guess I didn't point that out. You don't have to necessarily wear the Talisman yourself. You can and gain benefits of everything we were talking about, but you could give it to somebody else, and then it has other benefits as well. Wizard's going to get cantrip versatility. When you gain a level, you can swap out a cantrip, and they're going to get a couple new spells. Augury, enhance ability. Again, Augury, notable. It is a ritual spell. Speak with Dead makes sense for me, and then Divination, again, another ritual, which is good as a wizard to have them in your spellbook. And here, our last, not least here, are a couple of new fighting styles for anybody that gets a fighting style. So, Fighter, Paladin, and Ranger. Blind Fighting. Being unable to see a creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your attack rolls against it, provided the creature isn't hidden from you. That's pretty solid. Especially if you could, blindfold yourself in certain cool scenarios to get that whole, fighting blind feeling. Interception. When a creature you can see hits a target that is within 5 feet of you with an attack, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage the target takes by 1d10 plus your proficiency bonus. You must be wielding a shield or a simple or martial weapon to use this feature, or use this reaction. This is really good. I'd argue this is almost better in some cases than Protection, because it works when they're hit. So Protection gives them disadvantage, but this reduces the damage. So they may hit, but this may still save them. They may have disadvantage and still hit. This is if they hit, you can reduce the damage. So I think this may be almost better, but it doesn't have to necessarily just be a shield. It can be, or a weapon. You could, try to intercept it. This one seems like a no-brainer at this point. Thrown weapon fighting. You can draw a weapon that has the thrown property as part of the attack you make with the weapon. In addition, when you hit with a ranged attack using a thrown weapon, you can gain a +1 bonus to the damage roll. So again, if you want to be your dagger thrower or whatever the case may be, dart thrower, javelin thrower, whatever it is, you can draw the weapon and throw it as part of the attack. So that's a cool benefit of if you want to be throwing daggers, or you have 3 attacks and you want to throw 3 javelins, that's part of it. And it gets a bonus to the damage. Small bonus, only +1, but still useful. And then lastly, something that I've always been talking about a bunch recently, actually. Unarmed fighting. Your unarmed strikes can deal bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength modifier. If you strike with 2 free hands, the d6 becomes a d8. When you successfully start a grapple, you can deal 1d4 bludgeoning damage to the grappled creature. Until the grapple ends, you can also deal this damage to the creature whenever you hit with a melee attack. So I've said this a lot recently. The only way to be a truly good grappler, the only way to be a good unarmed fighter in 5th edition is to be a monk. Was the only really good way to do it, and there was no good way to really be a grappler either. Now, you could be an unarmed fighting Battlemaster fighter and be a good grappler and an unarmed fighter by having this fighting style. So if you're hitting them, I guess it says a D6 if you're punching, but if you're like, two hands hitting people, that becomes a D8. And if you grapple somebody, which again, if you had this feature up here, this one Battlemaster maneuver that we had talked about, Restraining Strike, hit a creature with your 2 hands, dealing a D8 damage. Use your bonus action and expend a superiority die to grapple them. Your strength athletics check is going to get a bonus equal to your superiority die. Then, on top of all of that, you could start a grapple. You deal 1d4 damage to the creature you grappled. Until the grapple ends, you can also deal this damage to the creature whenever you hit with a melee attack. So you wouldn't be able to hit them with 2 hands because you need 1 hand to grapple them, but you could be doing a d6 plus a d4 each time they're punching them, or hit them twice or 3 times, however many times, with 2 hands, dealing d8 plus your strength modifier and damage. Grapple them as a bonus action, deal a d4 damage to them as well, and then you've got them grappled. And if you had that other feature, they're also restrained. So then going forward on subsequent turns, you are punching them at advantage because they're restrained, dealing a d6 plus your strength modifier damage at, if you hit, but you're rolling with advantage, and you'd also deal an extra d4 bludgeoning damage on top of that. So if you manage to crit, you've got them grappled, they're restrained, they can't move, they have disadvantage on attack rolls against you, you have advantage, and you're doing, if you crit, 2d6 plus your strength mod plus another 2d4 damage for just punching them, which is awesome because there was no good way to get that roll, get that kind of, when I say roll, I mean R-O-L-E, in combat outside of being a monk. That is a long video. Holy shit, I've been talking for an hour. There was a lot to cover, obviously. I'm a huge fan of this. I would love more of this. This, I felt like my conversations that I had with Jeremy Crawford, months ago at D&D Live, I felt like this was not a route that they would have gone. Perhaps that's new blood on the D&D team. I'm going to take a small... I can't actually confirm that any of this credit goes to me, but I'm going to take a small piece of the credit because I've been putting out a lot of these fixing videos and a lot of these conversations about things I'd like to see fixed, adjustments, giving your characters more options, complaining about the lack of certain abilities and things available. And I know at least 1 or 2 people on the Wizards team watch my videos, so I'm going to take a small modicum of credit for some of this. But this is what I want. I don't know about you guys, and I absolutely want to know in the comments down below. Do you feel the same way? I think this is absolutely something needed. Let's go in, let's make a published book that if you want to use these, they're in a book that people can use to add expanded versatility and options to classes that have been out for 5 years, right? These things have been out there for 5 years. They kind of obviously changed the way they want to go on power level with some of the new subclasses, adding new features, getting more features early or more features overall, changing the way things like mechanics work for pets and things like that with new classes and new features. They've changed a lot. We've all been talking about this. I've said it a bunch of times. Why not go back and fix your old classes? Maybe this is their answer to that. They're not going to go back and make a hard errata in the player's handbook that says you need to do these. This is the updates we want to make. We're going to release it in a book and say, okay, here's some new subclasses for you, and here's some new optional rules. If you want, you can play with these. And I think that that's pretty sweet. I would also love if in this new book it comes with new feats, and it comes with new racial feat options, and it comes with new weapons and equipment. But this is a great start. I absolutely recommend that when the survey comes out next week, you do it and you tell them if you like it, that you do like it, and why. Because this is kind of the stuff I want to see going forward. I want to see us going back, looking at things that we've recognized could be adjusted or tweaked. Maybe this is a little too much for you, a little too much free switching of spells and cantrips. But what's the downside? Other than I didn't have that when I was playing, so you shouldn't have it either. What's the downside of giving people these expanded options or letting them choose to replace one feature for another? Yes, that kind of delves down a road potentially of more on the min-maxy side, but who cares? If your players really want to sit there and say, hey, I want to replace this feature with this feature, and I want to get this fighting style and this thing, and that's what they enjoy and that's what they want, then let them do it. I mean, what's the downside to that? I love options. To me, again, it's not for everybody, but to me, the more options I have means I could play the same type of character, the same class now, completely different than I would have played it 5 years ago, completely than I might play it tomorrow. And more options makes the game more interesting. Again, for a little while there, where I was playing a lot of different campaigns with a lot of different friends, everybody had played throughout multiple campaigns. Pretty much everyone had played every class that was out there, or we played in a party where somebody else played that class or played that specific archetype. So we kind of got bored of it, and we're like, I don't think I really want to play that class anymore, and I'm kind of running out of classes to play. This reinvigorates all of those classes. You don't have to make new classes. You're just building on the ones you already have by adding, breathing new life into them. I mean, I've run and played in campaigns with at least 4 different Oath of the Ancients paladins because people love it so much. But one of the big things people always complain about is, man, I really hate my Channel Divinity as an Oath of the Ancients paladin. This gives you an option to change it up. Maybe you want to have cantrips as your paladin and don't want to multi-class or take a feat. You could choose to swap your fighting style for cantrips instead. You feel like you never use your bardic inspiration, you give it out to people and they never use it. Well, if they could use it on a heal spell to increase the healing that they give to somebody, well, maybe they'll use it now. Maybe you never use your advantage on, you always forget that you have danger sense, maybe, right? You as a barbarian. I forgot I have advantage on dexterity saving throws. But you might remember a solid statistical number on your character sheet that says I have expertise in perception checks. My passive perception goes through the roof. That's a solid, number that you have there. Maybe, I found out I never really need to use my extra 10 feet of movement as a barbarian. Let me use my reaction to close the distance. Or I'm kind of bored with the maneuvers. I've played a Battlemaster fighter before. I thought they were kind of boring. I wish I had more things to help me out in a social situation or a non-combat scenario. Well, now you've got Silver Tongue and Studious Eye. Again, I really want to play a monk and I want to use a katana, but I don't want to be a Kensei monk. I want to be a shadow monk that uses a sword. Now you can if you go with this option. I really want to play a ranger and have them be viable. Now you can. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff here, a lot to unpack. That's why this video is so long. I hope that I kept your interest as I went through this stuff. This one, I've had a really shitty day today. And going through this and just the excitement that I've had reading all these new options is really exciting to me. So I hope it transfers to you guys as well. So if you haven't followed the channel here on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. There's a link in the description, obviously, the little button you can click. Like the video if you like it. If you don't like it, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. What's your favorite part of this video? What's your favorite part of this document? What are you most excited to see? What do you want to incorporate in games you're running? What do you desperately hope your DM allows you to incorporate into your own game that you're playing in? I want to know. I'm playing in basically one campaign as a bard, and this added a lot of cool stuff for me as a bard, so I'm excited for that. If you want to see me do stuff live on the internet, I play in a gameplay-based stuff every Tuesday night. I build characters every Wednesday night. My friend Celeste runs shows on the Twitch channel every other Sunday, and Monday I've been doing world building with you guys in the chat. So if you want to check us out on Twitch, there's a link in the description for that as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you stuck around till the end, kudos. I'll see you next time.